Hey, this is comedian Joe Sib, and you're listening to my bro Jim on bass.
Hey, it's Ryan from the Gym on Base Show, and I want to give a huge shout out to my friends at Claim to Fame. They have some of the best jackets out there that I love to wear. You can rock them for date night, a casual outing with friends, or even while doing a podcast. They're lightweight, they're durable, and perfect for any setting. My favorites are the dark blue, the olive shade, and if you want to switch things up and go for a lighter color, one of my favorite go-tos is the Pacific blue. So check them out at claimtofame.com for all their different styles. The next time you step out, you'll be feeling good with Claim to Fame. Welcome back to another episode of the Jim on Base Show. For today's very special guest, we have on a stand-up comedian who hails from the beaches of Santa Cruz, California. He's also a fellow rocker and was the frontman of the punk rock band Wax. He has two specials out called Dry Bar and 800-Pound Gorilla. Please welcome the great Joe Sib. Joe, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, and it's always nice to connect with a NorCal person. And you're in LA now, though. That's home, right?
Well, it went like this for me. Grew up in the Bay Area, Northern California, Santa Cruz to be exact. Santa Cruz and San Jose. My mom lived in Santa Cruz. My dad lived in San Jose. So spent all my formative years of cutting my teeth in Santa Cruz in the Bay Area. And then I moved down to LA. But now, after spending time in LA, I was there for a while. I'm now down in Oceanside, California. So after the pandemic, I just kept moving south and I just love it down here. So it feels like I just keep moving south. But I'm in Oceanside now. And it was a trip though, finding out about your podcast because I literally was at an airport flying home from a gig and something came through and you were interviewing someone and I think it might have been someone from the Bay Area. And I was like, oh man, I just kind of started looking at all the clips you had on there. And I was like, I got to reach out to this guy. So I'm really psyched that you'd have me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. And one thing, though, I don't know if I believe you're from Santa Cruz because you don't have any paraphernalia or shirts on with the
Dude.
big logo.
Oh my God. Dude, I do a bit about that. Everybody from Santa Cruz, I've never, sure, people from the East Coast, Boston especially, they love, they wear the Boston, logo. But dude, Santa Cruz is one of the places that you go there and it's like a uniform. Everyone just has the Santa Cruz sweatshirt on, pair of Ugg boots, sweats, little beanie on, a flannel over, the Santa Cruz sweatshirt. But yeah, there is definitely Santa Cruz pride with that hoodie. People love that red dot hoodie that says Santa Cruz on there. It's like everyone has to have one. I feel like when you're born, you're given a social security card and that hoodie.
Yeah, here's a gift card that you get as you grow older, so you
Yeah,
can
go
fit
to
into
Santa
it.
Cruz Surfboards. You can pick up your hoodie or go to NHS. Boom. I did a bit about that. I headlined a show, I don't know, maybe like a year ago at Kumbah Jazz Club. Have you ever been there?
No, no.
Yeah, it's a cool venue. Every jazz performers perform
Mm.
there, and there's a local promoter. He's now moved to Chico. This guy named DNA, who's just a legend in the comedy scene, and he brought me up to headline there. And I drove up with my son and a buddy of mine, which both of us spent tons of time up there, and we were joking around about the hoodie sweatshirt. And as soon as we literally pulled into Santa Cruz, it was like right away, everyone in the red dot. And I was joking around about that on stage. And then one of those clips I put out and it just totally went, viral. And it's funny because I've talked about surfing and the culture within my comedy, but it's not something that you would do all the time in California. When I do shows, I can do that. But it's funny, like Santa Cruz, when I put out those bits about just growing up in Santa Cruz or just what the surf culture was like when I was growing up and how it is changed so much. Like when I was growing up, it was very territorial. It was like, dude, if you weren't from Santa Cruz, you don't even paddle out, bro. I mean, I saw people get so gnarly on each other and they were my friends. Like they were people that like I was cool with. And even when I was serving with them, I'm like, oh my God, this is heavy. And there was such a different time, with it. And now, I joke around like you go to like places like the Hook or you go, to places like Pleasure Point or even, steamers and stuff like that. Because surfing has just become so popular. And then, with everyone getting a soft top, which as I've gotten older, I don't hate on those people and also like if you've ever paddled out on a soft top, you understand why people are on them. But I don't surf a soft top. Let's make that clear. But with that said, I just have seen the accessibility to surfing and like any other sport. It is just, like skateboarding. Like when we were growing up, skateboarding was so, it wasn't going to be in the Olympics. Surfing wasn't where it is, but it's just changed so much. But it was funny with the Santa Cruz bits I did. I thought I'd get a lot of backlash from it because sometimes I'll mention something about surfing and people are so just, you cannot say that. And, it is what it is. I think it's funny. But Santa Cruz was the opposite. They were like, "Yo, dude, we love our red dot." Like, what? And like NHS reached out to me. They're like, we're sending you red, whatever you need, man." So
Oh, that's a good deal.
you never know it's going to connect.
Well, speaking of that too, then maybe we can get you some free pizza because I was going to ask, are you a Pizza My Heart guy or?
Oh, dude, I used to work at Pizza My Heart.
Oh, really? Wow.
Are you messing with me?
No, is it the one like in Capitola, the
Dude, I
iconic?
no, no, I didn't work at that one. I
Mm.
worked at the one in downtown San Jose. Yeah, I worked there for like just a teeny bit, and I used to go to Pizza My Heart all the time in Capitola. I mean, that's a tradition, man. I think one of
Yeah.
my first dates I ever went on was at Pizza My Heart. Get
And
a
he,
slice, go sit down by the jetty. Oh my God, come on. Or it might
I,
have been the other way. Go to the jetty, make out, and then go get a slice. Yeah, I think you did it that way. Make out first, then eat a slice. Yeah.
and I think if you get like a large, you get a free T-shirt, right?
Yeah, yeah. But that's like that going to Pizza My Heart, that's just part of Santa Cruz. There's just certain, I mean, it's been down there. It's funny because growing up in Santa Cruz, the first place we hung out a lot as a family in the Sebs was Capitola. And
Mm.
where Pizza My Heart was, there was actually an arcade. And you would go down to Capitola, and my parents, we lived on a ranch. It was like a 5-acre horse ranch in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And my parents, on the weekends, would be like, let's go into Capitola. So it was like a journey. We'd go into Capitola. And I remember there was this huge arcade there. It had skee ball and all these old pinball machines and stuff. But at that point, it was the 70s, and Capitola was not as pretty and as nice
Mm.
and as inviting. And it was literally, I remember walking up to this arcade and seeing all these kids skateboarding, and it was the first time I saw skateboarders. But like, they're on pieces of wood with roller skate wheels and just like really low budge. Like, it had the sport had not been, it had, I don't even think at that point like Road Rider had come out or anything like that, like any urethane type of wheel. And I remember just these kids surfing with long hair, and it smelled like weed, and I was just like, damn, like who's that, and I went in there to play skee ball, and you're just, it was just such a different energy. But yeah, Capitola, I love Capitola.
Yeah, great memory. It's such a cool spot to go hang out, and it made me think. You talked about working at Pizza My Heart. What was your first job? Because mine was working at the movie theater in Tracy, California.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, my first job was, well, my first job ever. There was an Arts Pizza on 41st Avenue. It was a 40. I think now there's a Chevron there. And the first gig I ever got when I was a kid, I was really into magic, and I was doing magic all the time. And my dad and I would work on magic tricks. And like I'm talking like I'm like fifth grade. And the first gig I ever got hired for, I booked a gig. I booked myself to perform at Arts Pizza, and I did a magic show on like a Friday night while everyone was eating pizza. And I remember I booked it myself. I got, in the way we got paid was with pizza. So my parents were stoked. My sister was stoked, and I did magic. And that was my first like gig doing that. And then like my first, like, as I got older, and then like when I discovered like skateboarding and punk rock, like I definitely got out of magic. But I'd say that one of the first gigs that I had is I worked at a car wash in Santa Cruz downtown, kind of near the boardwalk. And that was how I bought my first moped. I worked for a whole summer for this dude, and I got a moped out of it. And that was washing cars, detailing cars. And I was super stoked because I was a punker, and the guy was like this this dude that was just like, yeah, I don't care what, we're back here behind the cars. You can look any way that you want. And then he let me play music while I vacuumed out the car. So I'd always have this little cassette with me. I'd slam in there and like play the new record, like Circle Jerks or Ramones or something while I was vacuuming the cars. And he'd come over and be like, what kind of music is this? And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. So that was my first gig.
Nice. Well, when I think of Santa Cruz too, I think of like the shows, the concerts at the boardwalk. So, who was your very first concert being a music fan and frontman of a band called Wax?
Dude, I mean, I never went the boardwalk. Like, I'm stoked that you have good memories of the boardwalk, but like when I was growing up, the boardwalk was lame. It was just like, dude, that's like where all the tourists go. Like
Mm.
none of us went there. And the bands that played there, like they always had bands play there, but you never really went there for a show. And but the first concert I ever went to, which is it's funny that you're asking me because first concert I ever went to was, it was a double header Giants at the original stadium, and the Beach Boys played in between the games.
Wow, that's
So it was
crazy.
yeah, and my dad took me and my sister. We actually have a photo of us there, and I remember I have like spiky blonde hair, and like I'd been going to punk rock shows. I'd never seen like a band, and I loved the Beach Boys, and it was the original lineup. Dennis was on, or was it Dennis the drummer? It was the original drummer. He hadn't
Mm.
passed away yet. So
Wow.
like yeah, so like seeing the Beach Boys, that was my first like big concert, and then and I went with my dad to that doubleheader.
Well, you've had some cool experiences then, because I also saw a post you and I think Jim Brewer had a Judas Priest experience too, right?
Oh,
Look
dude.
backstage.
Dude, it was yeah. Well, I mean, anyone that knows Jim Brewer knows that he's a full metalhead. Like I always say, like he loves metal and Metallica as much as I love punk rock. Like the Bad Brains and and the Ramones and the Clash. He's like a Sabbath, Priest, Metallica. Like traveling with him, it's like and he's into it. Like he still wants to go to shows. Like we were out on the road and he was like I remember we ended a run of dates, and I'm like, he's like, oh man, yeah, I'll see you at where we were catching up. And I'm like, what are you doing, in the 3 weeks or what? He's like, oh dude, I'm going to Germany. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm flying over to Germany to see Judas Priest. Flew all the way over there, saw Judas Priest, flew all the way back. And then when he came back, he's like, yo, dude, we got a couple days off. We're flying out to see Judas Priest. And we flew, I forgot where we went in the States, and we saw him. And dude, slayed, killed. Rob Halford crushing it. Got to meet him after the show because he's tight with
Nice.
Brewer. But yeah, it was one of those kind of things where like I'd seen them once before, but seeing them, like right up front, and Rob is like 70 something years old, like, and
Still
he's
doing it.
dude and killing it, not like phoning it in, killing it.
Bringing the Harley out on stage, right?
Dude brought the Harley out on stage. It was
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it made me wonder then, because you're a music fan, you appreciate it. You mentioned the Ramones earlier. Is there a band that's broken up, or maybe an artist that's passed away, that you would bring back for one show? Like, who would you pick?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, I love, I never got to see the Clash.
Mm.
So, I would have loved to have seen them. I was super fortunate because I grew up in the 80s, when punk rock hit the suburbs. So, like, being in San Jose, we were able to go to San Francisco, which it was so close, and at that time, there was clubs like the Farm, the Mab, the On Broadway. That was like kind of went in the other order. It was like the On Broadway was the first club I went to see, the first time the Exploited came over, the first time GBH came over, first time Peter and the Test Tube Babies came over, first time Addicts came over, like that real second wave of um, music from England. All those bands I just mentioned were all from, over in Europe.
Mm.
So I was there to see all of them the first time that they came over. And that was kind of the second wave. The first wave was obviously, the Sex Pistols and the Clash and all that. But that had already gone. They had already come and gone. So for me, I was like 15 in the right place at the right time, and I just really embraced it. And it just started turning into like every weekend I was going to a show in San Francisco, and I kind of just I had that connection with the city, and we would go up there, and I also was able to see so many bands from LA that at their peak. I saw Social Distortion,
Mm.
at their peak, original lineup so many times. I mean, and even now, they still deliver a great show. I got to see Agent Orange the first time they came up. So many bands like that. Bands from New York that would come out. Murphy's Law, Kraut. First time Scream came out from DC. First
Mm.
time Minor Threat came out. I saw 3 shows with Minor Threat, and at the On Broadway, and I in 7 seconds, bands like Youth Brigade, just those bands really inspired who I would grow to be. Lyrically, it hit hard with me. Like everyone else was like, oh, it's a phase, you get the mohawk. For me, I was really all in. I I was like, when Jimmy Percy from Sham 69 sang, if the kids are united, they'll never be divided, I was like, I bought it. And being in the Bay Area at that time, we had like, looking back on it, it was so unique because there was definitely, there was the LA scene, and then there was, but at that time you don't really know about the LA scene because there's not the internet.
Mm.
There's a magazine called Maxim Rock and Roll that would come out where people did fanzines, and you'd grab a fanzine and they were like a Xerox copied, you know, it was like the internet on Xerox copied, you know, paper. And you'd read about bands like, oh, whoa, this is going on at Fenders in Long Beach. This is going on in Sacramento. This is going on in New York. And then the only way that you really got to see different styles from different cities was those bands coming through. Like the first time I saw Murphy's Law or the first time I saw Agnostic Front, you know, like you were like, oh, okay, you when those dudes rolled into the San Francisco, you just knew right away they're not from here.
Mm.
Whereas I feel like the Bay Area, we had such a different look too, because, you know, being in San Francisco and being for Santa Cruz and San Jose, you know, all of us shared like everyone, you know, had a derby jacket on, everyone had a flannel. There was a lot of beanies, you know, there was just like we had to dress warmer, you know, whereas like Southern California didn't really have to. Like, you know, they might get away with a leather jacket. Like we had to do a leather jacket with a hoodie underneath. And I really feel like that Northern California Bay Area look really kind of was a world, it was kind of like exposed to the world as bands like Rancid and early Green Day, because they, you know, they were wearing that, you know, like when you look at old photos of Billy Joe, you know, from Green Day, you know, he's a kid, but he's you can tell he's from NorCal, you
Mm.
know. Or when you see those old pictures of Rancid, you're like, especially Lars being from San Jose, you know, you're like, oh yeah, that I know that look because I grew up with it. And I feel like, you know, to put together to say like what band I would love to see, um, you know, it would, if I was to say one band that I, like I said, I never got to see the Clash.
Mm.
So like, you know, that would be pretty special to see them. You
Yeah.
know, I've watched so many videos of them playing live, and it would be cool to see them kind of at their peak, like maybe in between like the first record and the second record, like that era right there. Like I would have loved to have seen them at that. Like for me, that's their peak, you know. I love, you know, I just love that era of their music. But yeah, that would probably be the band. There's a lot of bands now that are still together, you know, like Stiff Little Fingers. I love Stiff Little Fingers. I got to see them so many times. They're still playing. But it's sometimes hard for me to see the bands. Like, you know, I'll just be honest. I don't go and see the bands I loved
Mm.
from that era anymore because it's not like I love that they're still playing, but it's just they're it's not this, you know, I don't want to be that guy like, because you know you're watching the band, it's none of the original members, it's generally just the singer, and sometimes it might not even be the singer, and it's just,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, you know, it's like going to see a sports team. You're like, oh, dude, let's see, you know, let's see the Bulls at the peak, and you're like, all right, where's Pippen? Where's Jordan? Well, he's not here. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so who's playing? You know, like I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
And I mean that with respect. So, like, you know, if the haters are like, oh, that's lame, dude, you should support it. I totally support it. I love that those bands are still doing it. It's just for me, it's so like sacred. It's hard for
Yeah.
me you know, I'm sure it'd be the same if someone's like, yo, dude, let's go see Wax. Like, I don't look in, you know, the same way I did back then. I can't fit into that flannel I wore all the time. It's just not going to happen.
Well, it's like
That's why we don't do it.
AC/DC. You know, I keep seeing the
AC/DC, dude,
clips and I'm like, Ugh.
dude, it's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough.
It's
It's
like you're
tough.
happy
Not,
for them, but like,
I don't
yeah.
know. I think, God, I don't want to. Here's where I'm at with AC/DC is that I love Brian Johnson. I love Angus Young. I love Cliff. You know, when Malcolm passed away, oh my God, I was so bummed. I got to see AC/DC at the Cow Palace when I was a kid,
Wow.
and that was later on. Like I know, you know, there's people that saw him with Bon. I never got to
Mm.
see him with Bon Scott. Um, and he's like my ultimate front man. Like if you said, hey man, who's the epitome to you of like a front man of rock and roll? And as much as I love Joey Ramone, as much as I love Dave Vanian from the Damned, who I think is amazing. Like, let me sidebar for 1 second. If there was one band that I still go see because I don't know how they're doing it, is the Damned. Like you
Mm.
got Captain Sensible, you've got Dave Vanian. I think Rat's playing drums still, and I've seen videos. And I'm like, holy, like I don't know how Dave does it. He looks cool too. Like what I love about it is he's still keeping it tight. He hasn't put on the LBs. He still slicks it back. He wears a suit. He wears the gear. I love bands that still take pride in the way that they look on stage. I know that's totally vain and whatever, but it's like that's just the way I feel. Like if you're gonna be on stage, if you can, take care of yourself. And those dudes, when they hit the stage, they look great. Like I saw them in New York about 2 years ago, killed it. Um, but like with ACDC, it's just, you know, Angus with the hair and it's hard to, you know, I want to love it, but AC/DC is supposed to be one of those bands too that like, you crank it up to piss people off. And now it's like, I don't know if it really pisses anyone off. That's just
Yeah.
my, but I don't know. There is a part of me that's like, I don't know, man. Is it cool? Like if they're still enjoying themselves doing it and they think it's rad, like it's weird. Like with the Stones, those dudes are a million years old
Yeah.
and it doesn't bother me. I don't know why.
'Cause, yeah, he still sounds good. Mick's running around. It's like you
Dude, I
think
don't.
he's 20.
Yeah, and Keith is always looked like he's gonna die, or he died. Keith's
Yeah.
always looked like he died. I think Keith died years ago, and it's just the drugs that are in his blood system just keeping him alive. But yeah, I love seeing those guys. For some reason, I don't know. I love seeing those dudes. I don't know.
Well, one thing that I thought was really cool about Wax was, as you know, you had the legendary director Spike Jonze direct. He's been teamed up with REM, Kanye West, was the director for John Malkovich. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was super cool. I mean, when we did that video with Spike, he was just a kid we skated with. He was a photographer. He did a lot of stuff with this magazine called Big Brother, and he hadn't directed. He'd been directing skate videos and things like that. I mean, he definitely had spent a ton of time behind the camera. When we were like, "Hey, we need a video," it just turned into one of those kind of things where it was just a logical choice for him to do our video. And then by the time we got signed and we did the Guy on Fire video, he was literally blowing up. I mean, he had done the Weezer video, he'd done the, Cannonball with the Breeders. He'd done so many videos. So when he did that video, it was like at the peak of like Spike Jonze mania. So then, yeah, and it just blew up on MTV. So that was super. It was just a relationship though developed through skateboarding.
Well, is it true that you speaking of Weezer, you influenced Rivers Cuomo on like Say It Ain't So? Is that true?
I mean, say it ain't so. I don't know about that. I know that years ago, Rivers was writing a book, and I got a phone call from like his manager, and the whole Wax Weezer thing. But basically, like when I moved to Los Angeles, I moved there when I was like 23 years old, and it was like 90 and 91 maybe, and I met the three dudes in Wax. They were from Chicago, and then what was going on at that point, all these people were moving to Los Angeles to get signed. Like now it's hard to believe because, record companies and record labels they're not really, I mean, they're still there and there's still a purpose for them. But back then, it was like the gatekeepers were the record companies. Like if you wanted to be on the radio, if you wanted to have a career as a musician, you definitely needed to be signed to a label. So then what ended up happening was there was a mass movement to Los Angeles, and the hair thing, it kind of just, passed away. So at this point, or, not passed away, but just moved on. Nirvana was happening. Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 had just come out. So like I kind of got there as one thing was ending and another thing was starting. And the other thing that was starting was this new kind of movement that was tied into like grunge in the sense that like, all of us were into like Pearl Jam and all of us were into what Nirvana was doing. But there was also like this subdivision of music that was coming out. And it was like, it was bands like Weezer, bands like Wax. We were influenced by punk rock, but we were also influenced by bands like the Pixies. We were
Mm.
influenced by bands like the Replacements. So there's this new hybrid. And then there were still punk bands that were definitely going, that were like, that blew up. You had the Offspring, you had Pennywise, you had Rancid, all of that. So like all of us, it's a really kind of different time in music at that point. Everyone's kind of being influenced by so many different bands. But everyone's moving to LA. And it was crazy to think about, but there was these apartment buildings on Sunset Boulevard, and they used to offer like, they used to be like move in for free, like first month free. Some of them were like first 2 months free. So like as a band, you would move into these
Mm.
buildings, and there was buildings where, looking back on it, it was like in one building that was right near my house, it was like you had Wax, you had White Zombie, you had Circus of Power, you had Weezer, all living in the same
Wow.
apartment building, and sometimes even commingling. Like I think for a little while, like one of the Weezer dudes lived with the Wax guys, and like all of us are just
Hmm.
all trying to figure it out. But the goal is to get signed. The goal is to, and you're doing shows, and at that point, Wax was a band that like we definitely struck a nerve quickly, and we started selling out shows quickly. And at that point there was another band that was like looking to do shows, and it was Weezer, and we
Hmm.
gave them like, I hate saying like we gave them, but one of the first shows that they ever played was a show that I was like, yo dude, you guys should open up.
Wow.
And they played, and it's a trip because they were the opening act. and
Yeah.
you're the headliner. And then, it definitely flipped. And yeah, so like with Weezer, I remember there's a song, the sweater song,
Yeah.
and so like my band, Wax at this point, we release our first record, we get dropped. So like things are not going well for us. Weezer, on the other hand, signs to Geffen and they put out the Blue
Mm.
record and it just takes off, man. It's like rocket ship style. And I remember there's a time where I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get my band back, signed to put out another record, and I'm trying to figure it all out. And I'm taking jobs wherever I can. And at the same time, there's a radio station in Los Angeles called K Rock, and they're just banging the sweater song. So for me, it's like, oh my God, this band of just these nerdy dudes. Like no diss to Weezer and no diss to like the nerds that are listening. But like that was not my scene at all. Like I was the opposite. Like I love a nerd. Like, dude, what's up, bro? But I'm definitely like I wasn't that dude. Like I don't celebrate Star Wars, none of that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
punk rock. And like if there's a definition of masculinity, like I do a joke about toxic masculinity, it's like I'm probably like the dude for that. Like push feelings down and you're a bro. Like that's
Mm.
just who I am. So the Weezer dudes were not like that. They were very like, Rivers, she's the same dude. So when they blew up, it was definitely for me a fucking kick to the ego because I was like, how the fuck is that even possible? Like
Yeah.
these guys, they were coming to our parties to meet girls. Like they didn't even like like they would go, dude, are you having a party? Like they would call me. Like, oh, I would tell them, yo, bro, after the show, come on up. Dude, you guys should come. What do you got? I'd leave messages on their machine like, bro, check it out. There's a killer party after the show. You guys should be there. Dude, you guys are welcome. Come on, let's go. I invited all of them. And the beginning of the sweater song, if you listen to it, is a voice going, what's up, dude? So
Yeah.
stoked you guys are here. And what had happened was the rumor started getting out that they had taken one of the messages I left on their machine, inviting them to a party. And Matt Sharp went in there to the studio and they're like, yo, dude, let's play the message. And then they were like, no, dude, Matt will just imitate Joe. And then it kind of got out. It was kind of like this weird, like, is it me or isn't it me? But like, dude, imagine the band blowing up, and I'm right now just working jobs in the valley. Like, I think I was counting like underwear in like at night. Like, how you go, like back then it was like you'd go into like a warehouse or like a store, like a mall, and it was pre-computer, and they would be like, all right, we
Mm.
need you to count all of this inventory. And then like
Yeah.
I was the new guy and I was counting women's underwear. Like I remember it was like grandma underwear at the biggest sides. And I was just, oh my God. And this dude from like, Redondo Beach, like, yo, dude, like we can listen to music. I grabbed this out of the back section, and he puts on music and I'm like sitting there and I'm counting underwear, just so bummed out. And then that song came on and I was on K Rock and I was just like, what has happened to my life? I'm counting underwear and then this friggin' song. And then everyone had told me like, yeah, man, I guess that's you. And I was like, doesn't sound like me. And then that night I was like, holy shit, that is totally me. Like I do talk like that. And I was so bummed. And I remember it wrecked me. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, it's a sink or swim moment because I was like, you know what, man, screw this. Like I gotta get Wax re-signed. And at that moment, I just busted my ass. I got the rights to our record and I released it on my own label, Side One, and we got it on K Rock, and it blew up. And then we re-signed to Interscope, and we
Wow.
got a second chance in the game, and that was how we hired Spike Jones to do the California video. And it really came out of that moment of just like looking back on it, it was a huge ego moment because I thought I was the shit, and for years I hated that Blue record. I fucking hated it with a passion, dude. Like it would come on and I would just be so fucking bitter about it. And then as I got older and then, life happens and Wax, broke up and then I started Side One and I remember as I got further and further away from it, I remember I was somewhere up in the Bay Area or something. And like, I listened to the record from, beginning to end. And at that point, I'd heard so many, My Name is Jonas, I'd heard so many of the songs individually. And I remember I just had a moment where I'm like, this is a way better record. And and it's even hard for me to say, they're a better band than Wax. Like there's a reason why they are where they are. And I had that like just moment
Mm.
and I was just like, I get it now. Like I get why this record is so legendary. And it was funny because right around that time was when Rivers reached out to me and he was like, hey, I'm writing this book and I want to talk to you about, Wax. And he was so like, you guys were the guys and, you were always so cool to us. And he like acknowledged everything. And it was so weird hearing it from him. And then I remember at the very end of our call, I go, dude, I got to ask you one more question. He's like, yeah. He goes, ask me, why, what's up? And I'm like, dude, like I'd always heard there was a rumor that like beginning of the song, and he goes, I just want you to know it wasn't my idea, and but like it was out of respect, and I was like, dude, is it? And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, fuck yeah, like that stokes me, dude, like like it's a little part of rock history, and I was like,
Yeah.
really? And he's like, yeah, we just. We didn't know, we admired you guys. And I was like, you know what? And it was just and like, now I'm stoked on it. Cause like my kids are like, that's my dad, or people that know it, they'll be
Yeah.
like, dude, um, and then what was super cool was this is like 15 years ago. Weezer did like 2 nights at the Palladium, and I got a call from Rivers, and he said, "Hey man, we're headlining the Palladium like for 2 nights, and we always talked about when we were in Wax and you were in Wax and we were in Weezer, like how great that venue is, and I always saw so many great bands there." He goes, Would you guys want to get back together and play those shows?"
Wow.
And it was like full circle moment, and they
Yeah.
brought us out, and they just were so solid, and I just was like so grateful. It was a really cool full circle moment.
Yeah. And like you said, that'll give you some closure, and it's a positive thing now.
Oh yeah, but dude, I
Yeah.
think you got to have like I'm the opposite. Like like some people are like, "Wow, man, why would you hate on them and why would you be upset?" I'm like, "Well, dude, I'm stoked I did hate on them because that gave me fuel to push through. Like sometimes you
Mm.
need to not hate on people, but like sometimes you need to be kicked in the nuts, and sometimes you need to be like told someone else is getting what you want so that you work hard and that you I'm 100% for that. Like I'm not one of these people like, well, if it's not meant to be, maybe no, screw that. If it's not meant to be, figure out how to make it to be, like everything I've done in my life, I've had that attitude
Mm.
with. And sometimes it's not a healthy attitude and it's not a popular attitude to have. And I don't mean like you need to step on people to get to where you are, but me being in that store counting women's underwear and hearing a song on the radio by a band I gave their first show to definitely was a life lesson of like, all right, you've got two things to do. Either A, bust your ass, find a way in, either, go through the window, go through the back door, whatever, but either you can do that or you can be sitting here counting underwear and be that guy that's bitter. And I'm like,
Mm.
I don't want to be the guy that's bitter. I don't want to be some guy sitting at the bar drinking a beer, just like I could have, I should have, I would. I don't want to be one of those guys. Like either I want to go down swinging or I don't want to do it, or either I'm going to not do it. And I was like, but that was a game changing moment for me.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great story there. That song will never be the same for me when I listen to it now. But one thing I wanted to ask about too, must be a surreal thing, is you got to open up for Metallica on one of their tours. And are they into comedy? Because it seems like they are. Because I've had Dean Del Rey on; he's opened
Yep.
up for them. So it seems like they're appreciative of comedy and guys who are in comedy that are rockers.
Yeah, I mean that whole thing came all through Jim Brewer. Jim Brewer has he's friends with Lars and
Mm.
James. He's been friends with those dudes forever since the Saturday Night Live era, and they love Jim. Like when they did, I think it was like their 20-year anniversary. Jim inducted them into this thing in the Bay
Mm.
Area. There's like footage of that online. That's just great, where Jim's kind of like almost roasting the band, but like in such a Jim Brewer pro, just awesome way. And he had a relationship with, he has a relationship with with James and Lars. And I was just sitting shotgun. I was Jim's feature act. And, Jim and I were really good friends. But I was in the right place once again at the right time. And he got a phone call about going on the road with them at the end. It was like the 2018, 2019 tour. And I was just there and he was like, dude, they're not going to bring a band next year. And they asked me if I wanted to go. And I was like, damn. And in my head, I always joke around. I was like, dude, I don't know. That sounds fucking gnarly. That sounds like a bad idea. But then, a couple weeks later, he was like, dude, you're not going to believe this. They said I could bring someone. Do you want to go? And I was like, hell yeah. And my gig was like I was kind of like, Jim was definitely the MC of the entire, he was the MC of the show, and kind of I was his opening act. Like I was the DJ and the MC for getting everyone pumped up for when he came out. And then together we put together it was like a 2.5 hour show. Like to this day, they always used to joke around. You guys hold the record for the longest opening act we've ever had. Like not longest opening act touring wise, longest time on stage. Because our show every night was 2.5 hours,
Wow.
and there was breaks in it, and it was definitely like on stage, off stage, on stage, off stage, this that. But the fans, like to this day, I still get emails and texts, or like when people are in town, like Metallica was just doing shows recently, and people they're like, well, am I going to see you at any of the shows? Like they're fans, definitely. The first show or two, we had to figure out what we were going to do, but once we figured it out, it slayed, and people were stoked on it. That was the thing about Brewers, that he just he had that relationship with Metallica, and he was really able to tap into that relationship with those guys and bring that to stage and tell stories and share like cool memories that he had with them over the years, that people 20,000 people were like, oh shit, like this guy, and also the thing that I think Jim and I didn't expect was when it got announced that Jim was the opening act, we really believed, and Jim did too, that the arenas wouldn't be full. Like even Lars said to us, he's like, don't be disappointed. There'll probably be like maybe 1,000 people in here, all mixed up. And we were like, oh, dude, cool. Like less. Okay, cool. But it never was like that. Every single night, by the time like anytime we hit the stage, it was full. And then by the time we got done, it was to capacity. And it
Wow.
was because everyone knew Brewer's connection with metal and knew Brewer's connection with the band. So
Nice.
it was amazing, man. It was cool. It was definitely, I mean, dude, touring with them, it was like, you know, we're on our own bus, we're flying everywhere. Every hotel is just off the charts, anything you wanted. Oh, you want whiskey? Boom, here's your whiskey. Oh, you want your martinis? Boom, here's your martinis. Oh, you want to go to a dinner after the show? Boom, we're at the steakhouse that was closed, open. It was the greatest experience touring I've ever had in my life.
And I imagine, did you go to some venues that maybe you attended as a fan like years before?
No. Yeah, because the tour never came through like LA, so it was never like we never did the Forum, or
Oh, okay.
and when we were up in the Bay Area, we did Fresno and Sacramento, but we did do like San Francisco. Like if it would, for me it would have been like if we did the Shoreline Amphitheater, I
Mm.
saw Metallica there. Cow Palace, saw Metallica there, but we never went through those areas.
Well, one thing that you mentioned earlier that I thought was cool too is you started your own record company, Side One Dummy, and a guy that I'm a fan of is Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters, and you've had some
Yep.
great bands like Gaslight Anthem, Flogging Molly, so even like the fellow comedian Eric Griffin. So you've had some
Yeah.
cool people.
Yeah, I mean, Side One Dummy, I started it with my best friend, Bill Armstrong. We started it and we ran and owned it for 30 years. And yeah, I mean, that was definitely, and Chris Shiflett, was Bill, my partner that had the label with me, Bill Armstrong. The way I met Bill Armstrong was because of Chris Shiflett, because Chris Shiflett and Bill and I were all roommates. So we all lived together in Los Angeles when
Wow.
Chris was in a band with Bill. And then Chris went on to play in my band, 22 Jacks. And while he was in 22 Jacks, he got the call for the Foo Fighters. He was also in this band called No Use for a Name too, so it was like he was doing double duty. So yeah, I mean, he was the friend in our circle that has definitely catapulted into that rock level. That's just it's awesome. He's been with the band forever, and he's just he's one of our best friends. But with Side One Dummy, yeah, we released records from Flogging Molly, Go Go Bordello, Gaslight Anthem. Worked with the Warp Tour for like 25
Yeah.
years. And yeah, it was super good. All those bands that I signed, all those bands that my partner and I, Bill, worked with were super. It was a great ride. It was crazy.
And I don't know if you know, you probably do. He started his own podcast recently, and he had one of my rock favorites on, Craig Ross, the guitarist from Lenny Kravitz.
Oh, really?
So he's in the
Yeah.
podcast game now.
Yeah. What is it? Shredding with Shifty or something?
Yeah, yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And his podcast too. Even though I'm not like a guitar guy, but when I watch Chris's podcast, he does such a good job. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to see him doing that. And he's such a ripper on guitar. I mean, ripper since we were little
Underrated,
kids.
right?
I don't know about underrated. I don't know. I think if you know, if you're a guitar player and you watch that dude play,
Mm,
you're like, that guy rips. If he's underrated, it's because he doesn't toot his own horn.
yeah,
He's
that's
not one of
true.
those guys that's going to go around telling everyone he rips. But if you're in a circle of real musicians, Chris Shiflett is the guy. End of story. Like if Dave Grohl was on here right now, you'd be like, Dave, does he rip over you? Yes. Wouldn't even question it. It's like Chris is the guy. He's a ripper. Ripper. Ripper, but taste. He's
Mm.
tasty. Everything that guy, I mean, that guy could play an AC/DC song and and be so tasty and play it the way it needs to be. And then he can also, if you're looking for like what I love about Chris is that like if his background in music, it's like, oh, you want a rockabilly style. He loves the Stray
Mm.
Cats. He loves all that era. If you want a country lick, he's that guy. If you want a punk rock lick, he's gonna go deep with you with Social Distortion to the Dead Boys. If you want to talk about the Clash, he'll go deep. You want to talk about, classic rock, he'll go deep. He's a student of guitar. Still to this day, student of guitar. And if Chris, you ever hear this clip, dude, I love you, bro.
Well, that's what I think is cool about his show is he, as you know, he sits there and interviews with the
Yeah.
guitar in his lap, and he'll kind
Yeah.
of talk about a song and then kind of just do a. It might not be perfect, but you can just figure it out, obviously, and I think that's so
He's
cool to
been that way
see.
since we were kids.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember once we were on tour with the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and they gave us their record. Like, hey man, it was back in the day. Like, here's a cassette. Listen to it in the van. Tell us what you think. And by the time we got to sound check, Chris was already playing all the songs.
Wow.
Like, I'm like, how do you even do that?
Yeah. Well, as you know, it's called Jim on Bass. So since you're a Bay Area guy, we DM'd a little bit about some of your favorite Giants. So who were some of your favorite guys growing up?
Dude, my era is like that late Sevs, early 80s, Vita Blue, Johnny LeMaster, Milt May, like all these players that probably no one knows about. That era was just Willie McCovey. That era was just I loved it, the reason I love it, and I have a love of like first of all, love the Giants, even that era of like the later era, when they won the World Series and everything. I love Hunter Pence. Like I follow Hunter Pence like right now. And I like when that era of like Hunter Pence and all of those guys too. That was my second era that I loved. I love that team that won the World Series. I just like I remember exactly where I was because I never see them. Obviously when they won the World Series, it was much later after I was a fan as a kid. I don't know, just I just grew up with the Giants and I just always loved the team. And I'm not like it was funny, like as much as sports go, they were the only thing I really kind of kept in touch with. Even when like I moved to LA, my son and I would go see the Dodgers, Giants game. And I used to always say to my son, because we'd be at Dodger Stadium, like, yo, bro, like we cannot be rooting for the Giants, because we're in Dodger land and like we want to make it home. And he's like, really? And I'm like, we can root for the Giants when we get to the house. Like as soon as we get in and shut the door behind us, we can root for them. Because back then going to like Dodger Stadium was, oh my God, it was like, yeah, it was like, it
You're
was
risking
just,
your life.
oh my God, it was general population prison. You're just like, yeah, dude, okay, is that a shank that just went by? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. You're a part of it. You're like, yeah, take them out. But yeah, I don't know. For me, that era was the era that I loved because my dad and I would watch all the games. I lived with my dad. I moved in with my dad when I was like 15. So it was Giants mania, listening to him on KGO Sports Talk Radio or KNBR.
KMBR, yeah.
KNBR.
680.
Yeah, 680, dude. I used to love that. Yeah, it was rad.
Growing up being around the Giants and everything, did you ever get to meet Willie Mays or anything?
Yeah, we met him, Jim Brewer. Because
Wow.
of his connection with he would do stuff for MLB and we were out here doing shows in the Bay Area and Jim interviewed Willie Mays and it was like as a kid I was just like oh my God because my dad was he was a Giants fan and he always would talk about that basket catch the famous basket catch
Yeah.
and so when Jim got to interview Willie Mays they were talking about his career and who did Mays play with in between the Giants. So
He retired with the Mets.
okay, so so by the time he gets to the Mets, Brewer's a huge Mets fan, right? So he's talking about all that, and there was like a guy that was coordinating the interview, and they were very very like when we did the interview. They first Jim had to have like dinner with Willie, and like Jim's like, dude, cruise with me. So like we had dinner in the clubhouse, and Willie and Jim hit it off right away. So then Willie's like, let's like he's like, let's do the interview. And this is later on, obviously. So and he's a big man, like not big, like fat, like he's just there's a lot of them, like you just saw the magnitude of this guy. And we go in there and there was kind of like a handler for Willie. and he was kind of like a statistics guy too. He's like a kid. And he's like, they're talking about this and they're talking about that. And then all of a sudden they start going over stats for when he played for the Mets. And they're like, yeah, when you played for the Mets, they were a losing team. And I'll never forget Willie's like, I never played for no losing team. And the kid's like, well, no, this is where your stats were. He's like, what are you talking about? Well, I never played for no losing team. Like and it was just like, and Jim and him were just laughing. And yeah, Willie was, he was, you could just feel the energy coming off this guy. And he was telling us great stories about when he played ball before he was a pro, and they'd give him like $1,000 in cash. And Jim's like, dude, were you afraid someone was going to steal your money? He's like, no one's going to steal my money. Like he was, like that, and talking about just, different eras of baseball and, what he loved about it. And it was one of those moments, like, I just felt so blessed that I was in the right place at the right time to see that. And like I said earlier, like I follow Hunter Pence just like because his personality and his energy. Like my dad and I used to go watch the Giants when Hunter played for him. And my dad and I had a joke about Hunter Pence loves baseball so much that like even after the game, he's trying to go to a park to get a pickup game. Like we always thought like he just loved baseball. Like you just are like, that guy loves it. Like he's not ever phoning it in. And like I loved his energy when he played. And I also loved how he was also like not afraid to make fun of like his batting style and just him as a player. And and also everything he went through his career is pretty, it's impressive, but it's also inspiring.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
forever giant.
Yeah, I mean, he's that guy.
Well, one thing that I think is cool about comedy that's different from like baseball, different from music, is like if you're a big band, for the most part, you're gonna stay at a certain level, right? Venue wise.
Yeah,
If you're an established player, you're not really gonna go back to the minor leagues usually.
yeah.
But as a comedian, you can play an arena, you can play a big theater, and then 2 nights later, you're maybe working on some stuff in the club. So
Oh, dude, yeah,
that's so
comedy.
cool.
Yeah, comedy. Like, dude, this last couple weeks that I just had, like, I was doing shows in Chico, Sacramento, and I'm playing super, little comedy clubs, like 100 seaters, 150. And then like if I go out on the road with Brewer, it's theaters. And then if I headline on my own and like say like, somewhere in San Diego, it's it could be anywhere from the Comedy Store to,
Mm.
an improv or something like that. And then like every once in a while you just get a random gig where like last week I was in Key West doing a show out there, and it's like it's a whole different energy. You got to wear the suit and you got to be
Mm.
this guy. And yeah, so like your comedy career kind of goes up and down and all over the place. And it's definitely like you have to love doing stand up to be doing it the way that like if you're going to do it professionally. Like it's definitely not for the person like, oh, if you're looking to get famous and you're looking to do this and you're looking to do that, like it's not comedy. Comedy is not the game to get into. It's definitely because there's so many people and there's so many people doing it. You have to really have a different perspective and a different voice to be heard above the noise.
Mm.
That's the thing that you really have to work on. It's being heard above everybody else.
Well, I imagine too, being the front man of a successful band, did that kind of help to then jumping on stage and being the guy everyone's staring at?
I mean, I don't think it helped with like being funny. I think it just helped with being maybe fearless.
Mm.
When I started singing for bands, it was in the 80s and and I was in a punk rock band and there was a lot of violence, back then, a lot of fighting, a lot of, there was riots, there was always a tension of you don't know what's going to happen. I remember being on stage at the Farm in San Francisco and we're going through our show and I did a stage dive and then all of a sudden I was like being like pulled back to the back of the venue and I was like, oh, like they must really be into what we're doing. And then like I got to the back of the venue and it was like four skinheads and they just started like dancing on my head. And I was like, oh, damn. All right. And I made it back on stage to back to where I sang. And I remember years later, someone saying to me like, I was going to do my first set at the Improv in Hollywood. And this guy tried to get in my head and say, you better be careful because, I've seen comics die up there on stage and, this crowd will eat you alive. And I was like, well, are there skinheads here with knives? And he's like, what? And I'm all, there's skinheads here with knives. Is anyone going to stab me? He goes, no. And I go, then I'm fine. So, I mean, that attitude, I feel being a singer at that time in music definitely was something that, has given me that attitude, and that kind of like that fearless attitude. And also when you're a comic, let's face it, like, you have to, like, everyone's like, oh man, you must have huge balls to do that. It's like, no, it's like to be a comic, you have to be completely delusional. You have to be so delusional. You have to tell yourself, yeah, there's 200 people here. I'm the funniest person in the room. And anyone that tells you like, oh no, that's not the right attitude, they're lying to you. You have like when you're on stage, there's one job, murder. That's it. I don't care if you're going up before your best friend. I don't care if your other friends after you. And if you're a comic that doesn't have that attitude, then I don't know. I don't really
Hmm.
have time for it. It's like I'm there. My job is and I love that's what I love about working with like comics that are just into it. Like we're all friends, off stage, but like once that mic's in my hand or once it's in the next comic's hand, I want that. I want that like, oh dude, you think you killed it. Here I go. I want to murder anyone. And there's sometimes an attitude with, comics, maybe where it's this attitude of like, oh man, I don't want to bring it like that. And I'm like, well, then why are you doing it? Like, if you're
Hmm.
not going to do your best, it's like getting in the batter's box. Are you getting up there going, I don't know, dude, maybe just get a single. I don't know. It's like, no, dude, sure. Sometimes you're like, I got to get on base. Okay. Get it. But for the most part, you're going up there to crack one out of the park.
Yeah.
You didn't get, it's like these athletes didn't get into the game to be okay. You want to be the best.
Yeah, I only want to hit singles.
Yeah. No one's ever
Yeah.
said that. Now there are players though, and there are comics that you're like, dude, this guy goes up, he's perfect. Like, dude, he's got a 20 minutes that, oh my God, it's great. And that's a guy getting on base. But where I'm at in my world, I've been doing comedy for 16 years. And I came, when I came to comedy too, it wasn't like a big love affair of comics like, oh God, so stoked you're here. Like I was met with a lot of people like, dude, you're a musician, bail. Like,
Hmm.
like in music, people are like, oh dude, like it's very like I was used to like, dude, my band plays and then you guys play and like we're all gonna do a tour together. That's not the way it is in comedy. It is definitely an individual sport. Do not talk to me. Like
Hmm.
I remember when I first came, I was probably so annoying to comics because I would hang out and I'd try to talk to people and now I'm one of those dudes. It's like, if I'm going on at 8:20, I show up at 8:15, I do my set, I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't, and like I'll hang out with certain people, but the comedy is not a hangout type of sport. It's individual by yourself, which is hard for me because I'm not a real good by yourself type of guy. Like especially when I'm on the road, like I've gotten way better at it, but I'm not like when you're in a band, dude, you got four dudes to hang out with. You got your roadie to hang out. You got a guy selling merch. You got different dudes for different vibes. Like, oh, I want to have beers. I'm hanging with our guitar. I'm hanging with our guitar player. He loves to drink. Hey man, I want to stay sober, dude. I'm hanging out with our merch guy. He's been sober for 6 years. Hey man, I want to talk about what's going on in the world. That's our rhythm guitar. Like you have different people, but when you're a comic, you are so low, solo, 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 solo the whole friggin' time. If you're not careful, you don't talk to anyone until you get to the club, and it's a
Hmm.
nightmare. That's why you got to go to the gym. You got to go for a walk. You got to go get coffee. You got to hang out. You got to call people.
Yeah.
That's how you get through it. But yeah, totally different than for being in a band. And people always say to me, like, what do you think's harder, like making it in a band or making it as a comic? Dude, making it in a band, easy. Easy, dude. You do 6 songs that rip. You do those 6 songs for the next 3 years. Comedy, dude, you come to a town, you crush it, and you're like, all right, we're booking you next year. While you're flying out there, you're like, oh shit, I can't do anything from last year, or if I do, it's got to be so small in a different take, people won't come back. Think about it, dude. There's thousands and thousands of comics, so many
Yeah.
people out there. And they're really good and they get good fast. Why? They watch YouTube.
Hmm.
There's a lot of more. It's so available to like figure it out the trick.
What is your home club if you're in the LA area? And where can people see you?
I'd say my home club's La Jolla Comedy Store down here
Hmm.
in San Diego.
Okay.
And then when I started, my home club was Hollywood Improv and
Hmm.
the Laugh Factory. But I'm all over. Like I would say the best thing is go to my Instagram, Joe Sib, SIB. All my dates are always on there, and go to joesib.com. Everything's there, and come out to a show. I'm on tour a lot, and yeah. Oh hey, can you 1 second? Because
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
to answer this dude really quick. Hold on here. Hey, it's Joe Sib, dude. I'm just finishing up this podcast. Are you here? No worries, dude. I'm just doing a podcast with Jim on Bass. Do you listen to Jim on Bass? Yeah, I'm doing his podcast. Yeah, dude, you got to check it out. You'll love it. All right, brother. Later, brother. Look at me promoting, dude. I'm
Yeah,
promoting you.
thank you.
You got to leave that part in. What I was going to say was, I would say that, yeah, the best way to find out everything about me is Instagram, joesib.com.
I'll put
And
a link in the
yeah,
bio too.
yeah, do that for sure. I'd
Yeah.
say my Instagram's the best thing for me. And then joesib.com.
What's funny, really quick, and I'm going to end on this, was you just had a phone call and you just told me that you have like a garage door guy coming to fix.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had Dwayne Kuiper on, ex-Giant broadcaster, as you know, and I had him
Yeah.
on as he was waiting for the furnace guy to come over. So, you know, when people are on lockdown in that 8-hour window, we might be coming between 9 and 8 p.m. It's good to do podcasts.
Dude, I always do a joke. I joke around about that all the time. Like, what job can you have where you're like, I'm going to be there between 7 a.m. and 5? Like, how does that fly? I've been waiting for this guy. It's noon. I've been waiting for him since 8. He's still 25 minutes away.
Well, next time we do an episode, I'll just call you between 9 and 5. You know, just
There
be,
you go.
be on house arrest.
Well, dude, I really got to thank you for having me on, man. I hope your listeners enjoy it. And yeah, man, just real fan of everything that you're doing. I love your vibe. And yeah, man, hopefully Hunter Pence will hear the shout out that we did, man.
Yeah.
Every time I go to the Bay Area, I always send a text to him like, yo, dude, I'm at the Punchline, like just to see if he would show up. You know?
Well, hey, we're going to get him to show up this time.
Dude, that would be killer.
Well, Joe, I got to say, big thanks for coming on. And I had a great time talking music, comedy, sports with you. And I'll definitely reach out to you next time. I go to LA a lot, so hopefully I'll be able to see you
dude.
do your thing.
I was gonna say next time you're down here, definitely hit me up because, like I said, I'll be in I'm always up in LA. I'm always, in San Diego, but definitely hit me up, and I would love to meet you and get you out to a show.
Awesome. Well, hey, get back to waiting for the garage door to get fixed. And thanks for coming on base. I'll see you down the road.
Thanks, you brother. Appreciate it.